On your next page of notes, we're going to continue with what we had started talking about unit rates. Make sure you're on the correct page of notes. A rate is a ratio of two quantities or amounts, that's what this word means, using different units. Basically, when I'm talking about different units, we're talking about two different things. Going back to our first example, you can't be saying students per students. That's the same unit. You need something different, like students per class, miles per hour. See how they're different? Students and class are not the same thing. They are considered different units. Some examples of rates are like 80 miles in 2 hours, or 60 students in 2 classes. So I'm comparing miles to hours, students to classes. I got 2 different units. Now, a unit rate compares a quantity to 1. It always has to be comparing it to 1 unit, 1 piece. Otherwise, it's not actually a unit rate. It would just be a ratio or a rate. Unit rates always have a denominator of 1. I can't stress that enough. If there isn't a 1 in any, look, there's no 1 here, there's no 1 here, this is not a unit rate. Unit, think of 1 unit cube. 1 should be synonymous with a unit rate. You better have this number somewhere in the mix. Some examples of a unit rate are, I'll use my examples for, if I went 80 miles in 2 hours, my unit rate would be 40 miles in 1 hour. Got my magic 1. I am good. If there are 60 students in 2 classes, my unit rate would be 30 students in 1 class. That's what I'm looking for. To find the unit rate, you need to write the rate as a fraction. And you're going to use division. Basically, it's like you're simplifying the fraction. And you're going to write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of, oh, look, there it is again, 1. That's what you're aiming for. So I'm going to zoom in. If I have 90 miles in 2 hours, how do I get from 2 to 1? Using division, that's what I'm using. I divide by 2. What I do to the bottom, I got to do the same to the top. 90 divided by 2 is 45. So this is my unit rate. 45 miles per hour. When it doesn't say, you could say per 1 hour, but if I just say per hour, the assumption is that it's only talking about 1 unit. Let's look at the next one. We're going to write the unit rate for each one. Another thing to note, if it says miles on top, you're going to go ahead and write the word miles on top on the other fraction. You don't change the order of the ratio. You don't switch what's on top and what's on bottom. Miles on top, miles on top. Hours on bottom, hours on bottom. Another thing to note down here, time for a unit rate is usually, not always, on the bottom. Per minute, per hour. You will typically see this on the bottom of the fraction because that's the one you want to change, not 3 hours, but you want to change it to 1 hour, the unit rate. So, I got to look. How do I get from 3 to 1? Using division. Well, 3 divided by 3 is 1. Any number divided by itself, the same number, gets me to 1. What I divide on the bottom, I got to divide on the top. 120 divided by 3 is 40 miles. So there is my unit rate. So in this case, in you went 40 miles per hour. That's this particular unit rate. All right, we're going to go to the next one. You have 100 pages in 4 hours. Right away, I'm just going to copy the units. That's what this is, pages, hours. Those are the units, or the things we're talking about. So now I want to get from, not every 4 hours, I want to know every 1 hour. How do I get from 4 to 1? Well, any number divided by itself will get me to 1. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. What I divide on the bottom, I'm going to divide on the top. 100 divided by 4 is 25. There is my unit rate. So the question might be, if I read 100 pages in 4 hours, that means I read 25 pages per hour. All right, let's do 2 more. $250. Oops, sorry. For 5 pairs of shoes. So my unit is money. Money's still going to stay on the top. And my unit on the bottom is pairs of shoes. Because I'm talking about a unit rate, I need to make a fraction with a denominator of 1. So right away, this should be 1 pair. Pairs of shoes is fine. So how do I get from 5 to 1? 5 divided by 5 is 1. What I divide on the bottom, I got to divide on the top. The same thing. So that way it's equivalent. 250 divided by 5 is $50. So that means it's $50 per pair of shoes. That is the unit rate. It's $50 per pair of shoes. And then the last one, oh, this sounds nice. We're figuring out how many vacations you can take in each 1 year, because a unit rate is comparing to 1. I'm going from 3 years to 1 year. How do I get from 3 to 1 using division? 3 divided by 3 is 1. What I divide on the bottom, I got to divide on the top. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So that means we take 2 vacations per year. That is my unit rate. All right. If you need to rewind or pause or go back on any of these problems, feel free to do so. You are now going to work on the problems on the back. They give you a rate, and you need to simplify it into a unit rate. So again, just like on the other side, you need to write 84 points. You need to tell me each unit over 6 games. But if I'm talking about a unit rate, I'm comparing it to every 1 game. And now this is how you would set up all the problems. And you need to figure out, how do I get from here to here? What I do to the bottom, I got to do the same to the top. All right, you're ready to get started.